rise and seated.
Thank you very much. All right, everyone can be seated. Mr. Carter, you can continue with the reading back.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Houston, you recall that when you sent your cease and desist letter to Gawker, you asked for the identity of the persons who were involved in sending the video to Gawker?
Yes, sir.
And we heard A.J. Delario's testimony from earlier today that the DVD came to him anonymously. Do you recall that?
I did hear that.
Now, let's pull up Exhibit Defense 269, please. This is the October 9, 2012 response letter that came from Cameron Stracker on behalf of Gawker in response to your cease and desist letter, Mr. Houston. And if you could please highlight, please go back to Cameron Stracker. Right. Please highlight the second sentence that says, you asked that Gawker disclose the identity of the person who provided the video, and then below that, we respectfully decline your request. You received that letter from Mr. Stracker?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Stracker didn't say, we don't know the identity of the person who sent us the video. It just says, we decline your request.
Correct.
Did you ever speak to Mr. Stracker where he elaborated?
No, sir.
Let's go to same exhibit, but further down where it says it in a place with no reasonable expectation of privacy. Right there. This is the Cameron Stracker letter where they're taking the position that Mr. Belay had no reasonable expectation of privacy. Did you look at A.J. Delario's article that he wrote? You've
Yes,
read that?
sir.
Could we pull that up, please? And you read, Mr. Houston, that A.J. Delario wrote in his post on October 4th, when he accompanied that with the sex video of Mr. Belaya, he said Hulk lawyered up because he claims he was secretly filmed, and then later on he says, allows Hulk and this woman their privacy. Do you see that?
I did.
The response letter from Cameron Stracker to your cease and desist letter, do you consider that to be consistent with A.J. Delario's article here?
Absolutely not.
No further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Lee, are there any questions for Mr. Houston? If you do have any
Right.
questions for Mr. Houston, no, okay.
No.
Great. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Vogt, would you like to call that?
Before we move on to that, Your Honor, I would like to admit plaintiffs' exhibits 15, 16, 268, 269, and as well as plaintiffs 49 evidence at this time.
Any objection?
No objection.
All right, thank you. Then the court will receive plaintiff's exhibits 15, 16, 268, 269, and 49. Would you like to move up? All right, so Mr. Vogt, please remain.
Next, we will call Nick Denny. He is videotaped deposition. The date of the deposition is October 2nd of 2013.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, the jury, please consider this testimony by Mr. Denton that was taken under oath on October 2nd, 2013, as you were other evidence in this case. Thank you.
swear that the following testimony will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Good morning, Mr. Bennett.
Good morning.
Would you state your full name for the record?
Nicholas Guido Anthony Denton.
And Mr. Bennett, the oath that you were just administered by the court of order is the same oath that you would take if you were appearing in a court of law. You understand, do you not, that the penalties of perjury that apply here in this informal setting are exactly the same as the penalties of perjury that apply in a court of law. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
And can you tell me where you went to school and when?
School was in high school or school was in university?
Let's start with high school.
University College School, London.
In what years?
Until 1984.
And then?
Then I went to Oxford University.
And from when to when?
That would have been 85 to 88.
And did you receive a degree?
I did. Politics, philosophy, and economics. Actually, I should say that I passed the exam and I probably should have picked up that document.
There came a time, obviously, when there were other internet entities that you created. And can you tell me about the history of those?
We have 8 major sites currently, and in the last 10 years we've probably launched 18. We tend to cull properties. We try to be ruthless about culling properties, so that ones that work we invest in, the ones that don't we fold into one of the larger and more successful entities.
With respect to Gawker.com, what supervisory role do you currently hold?
Well, I am president of Gawker Media. I appoint the editors of each site under our control, and I would terminate them. I determine their salary levels, the budget for the site.
And you were, in that capacity, made aware of the Hulk Hogan story, the sex tape story, before it was published, correct?
Yes.
When you invest in an entity, how do you determine whether it is working or not?
Usually, audience is the measure that identifies.
And how do you measure audience?
Currently through a service called Quanticast, formerly through a service called SiteMinter.
Now, Quantcast provides a number of metrics.
Yes.
Which metric is critical to you in determining whether a site is working or not?
Is now, or has been generally over the last 10 years?
Yeah, let's talk about how your view of that has evolved.
Okay. With pleasure. We began looking at page views, I think largely because that was the default measure that SiteMeter provided. SiteMeter was the first measurement service that we used. Page views was just a standard, and because the popularity of articles could be measured and the appeal to readers, we tied early on, we tied compensation of writers to that measure, to the degree to which they were satisfying readers. In time, I can't even remember exactly when it would have been, but it would have been a few years later, we switched to uniques as a measure of that reader satisfaction. Unique is a distinct individual who has read a recite or an article. We would tend to tie, we did at one point tie compensation, we tried pretty much everything. We did at one point tie individual author compensation to the unique visitors to the articles that they wrote. Every method has its flaws. The page view method tended to encourage slideshows. So articles based on, a slideshow is kind of a series of photographs that we forward through, and that generates all the page views. But not really reader satisfaction. So I think I thought that was a false measure of reader satisfaction. The individual
Is that something that encouraged that the writers were then economically incentivized to do in order to boost their page views?
Yeah.
That was done.
Every incentive system has a perverse effect.
Sure.
And that was a particular perverse effect. One could probably counter that by including other measures, but if you include too many measures in a performance metric, then it tends to confuse the writer or salesperson or lawyer or whoever it is, and can result in them just not paying attention to the metrics at all. And so simplicity is a value. The individual unique measure, so this is the unique visitors to individual articles written by a particular author. So that, I can't remember how long we tried that for, but that tended to result in too individualistic an approach by the writers, and so and competitiveness within the organization, the excessive competitiveness. So looking at their own individual interests over the interest of the brand and the general reader satisfaction. So we settled a few years ago, and actually haven't really changed it much since. We settled on unique visitors for the site as a whole for the month. And setting a target which was based on a weighted, based on an average, a trailing average of that previous performance, and given as a percentage of the site's payroll. And that's provided us with a reasonable balance of an incentive to satisfy readers, but at the same time an incentive to work together to satisfy readers.
I appreciate the explanation. That's very helpful. In terms of the decision to employ the metric of unique visitors for the site per month, I take it that was fully in effect in October of 2012 when the Hulk Hogan section.
It was.
Sorry. And the trailing average you talked about, that's the average for the prior 6 months. Is that your understanding?
I think it's another been 12 months, because it's been out for 6 months and 12 months.
And that then serves to become the target based upon which the compensation of the writers on the site is based.
Exactly.
And the maximum additional compensation that can flow to all the writers on the site during any given month is 20% above the target.
Typically.
Given the metric that you've chosen, to what extent are you able to correlate ad revenue received in any given month to the unique visitors for the site?
We don't really.
You've never attempted to correlate those two measures?
There is a correlation in the most general senses, which is that we have done well by satisfying our readers. We're profitable and growing, and we do satisfy our readers. If you look at those metrics, and those two phenomena, reader satisfaction, our reputation amongst readers for telling the truth, for being authentic, for being conversational, for being real, that's been correlated with financial success. Yeah.
Any other statistics that you looked at, that you recall, in preparation for this episode?
Yes, looked at the numbers for the Hogan article, the numbers for the site for that month, the bonus calculations for the site's staff that month.
Can you recall what information you gleaned about the bonus that the staff received for the site for that month?
They maxed out on their bonus for that month, which meant that they were more than 20% ahead of target. That bonus is capped at 20%.
Does the term traffic pouring mean anything to you?
Yes.
What is that?
How would I characterize that? An article that is cheap, that is gratuitous, that seeks only to provoke without truly informing. Empty calories, that would probably be the kind of closest the metaphor that would probably capture it the best.
On page 4 of the Guardian story, Exhibit 40, there's a quote from an unidentified writer, which ends with the sentence, "We are paid to get traffic, and that dictates what stories you do." You see that? That's the end of the second full paragraph on the 4th page.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that writer's characterization?
No.
Why not?
The bonuses, which are dependent on traffic, only represent a maximum of 20% of the site budget, and the majority of the compensation is fixed base salary. So I think it's an oversimplification, it's a dramatization.
You don't believe that that's the perception of the writers who work regularly for the Gawker.com site?
Actually, Editorial is probably an interesting case in point, because his policy was always look at the entirety of what the site produces and what the site's writers produce, and don't necessarily expect every single writer or every single article to produce traffic. And when we're talking about traffic, we're talking about reader interest.
Yes.
So it's our proxy for reader interest and success in delivering the real value that we have for readers.
And also is a metric that's used in terms of what revenues can be derived from advertising.
Not directly, no.
But indirectly.
The unique visitors for a site for a month, that would help to determine whether an advertiser includes you in a buy-in.
And whether you meet certain targets for numbers of impressions.
Sorry?
And whether you meet certain targets for numbers of impressions.
But we, at least since we moved to uniques, we don't measure or track or reward based on impressions.
You don't reward your employees based upon that.
No.
But the contracts that you sign with advertisers are premised upon the numbers of impressions.
They are, yes.
So let's jump down a couple of graphs on page 2 to the paragraph that begins, a self-confessed internet addict. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if you read the entire paragraph, because I want you to have the context, but I'd like to talk to you about the final sentence of that paragraph. So the sentence reads, the stories they can't publish because they are too sensitive, or because they've been told off the record, or because they have only one source, or they can't be stood up. I'd like to parse that a little bit. So first, is what you're meaning to say is that Gawker media generally, or Gawker.com in particular, will publish stories regardless of their sensitivity?
We are less sensitive to sensitivity than traditional newspapers. Our site's Deadspin has a tagline, I don't know if you've seen it. It says, without access, favor, or discretion. That pretty much captures the essence of Gawker media.
And that's a tagline that, though it appears on the Deadspin website, is applicable more or less across the board.
Yes, I own those words.
Okay. And you certainly own them with respect to a description of Gawker.com.
Yes.
One of the other differences between internet journalism, if I can call it that, and traditional journalism is the immediacy of the media. Correct?
Yes.
Who do you consider your online competitors?
You know, it's a rapidly changing landscape, as I'm sure you know. And we have direct, close competitors such as BuzzFeed. But I'd look at Twitter, Tumblr, and other information networks as being probably larger threats to our existence, models for our regulation.
What about organizations like TMZ?
TMZ, I've never liked TMZ much.
You don't consider them a competitor to Gawker?
Yeah. Do we compete for, I don't even think we compete for advertising revenue all that much. I think our client base is quite different. And I respect what they've achieved. I certainly respect their contacts and sources and police and law firms, that they certainly have access to information that we don't have in LA. Did you rate them?
I'm sorry?
Did you rate them?
I take the fifth. Okay.
But my broader point is that the competition that we face is actually not traditional competition in any sense. The world in which we operate is a world of anonymous Twitter accounts and information, whether it's a sex video or any other kind of information that spreads through email virally that is not disseminated, published in a traditional fashion.
Regarding the story that you still have in front of you, 40. Let's take a look at the paragraph, the fourth full paragraph on page 3, beginning no such thing as too far with our titles. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
You believe that did you believe in December 2006 that was true?
I have no reason to believe that this quote was inaccurate, except for the fact that the article is sloppy.
Do you believe that this is the case today?
What, that...
So far, there has been no such thing as too far with our titles.
I mean, I guess it depends on the definition of too far and which standards one is applying, whether it's journalistic standards or legal standards.
Well, I'm asking you in terms of your, I assume that this is your view, and so I'm asking you whether you believe that there has been no such thing as too far with our titles.
Well, I'm looking at this quote, assuming that this quote is accurate, and I don't have a reason to believe that it isn't. The too far is a reference to the standards, the journalistic standards that were set down by print newspapers, journalistic standards that I think are irrelevant or even damaging in an internet era, and I'm absolutely proud that we'll go further than they will, and that they have and they did.
Mr. Denton, would you look back at the Hollywood Reporter story that we looked at earlier today? And all I want to do is direct your attention at this point to that headline, which reads, Gawker's Nick Denton explains why invasion of privacy is positive for society. Do you believe that that headline accurately summarizes your view of invasion of privacy?
No, I don't think the headline is particularly accurate summary of it. The only time I mention invasion of privacy in this, I think, is in the context of supposed invasion of privacy. And invasion of privacy is a term used by other people, or often used by those that are uncomfortable with our coverage.
Do you believe that defamation is good for society?
I believe that transparency is good for society.
The question I actually have is unrelated to the stories that you regret running, because we've already been over that. I'm trying to get you to identify one of these stories that you regret not doing. And the answer reflects
So it's an interesting topic. I believe in total freedom and information transparency. I want everybody to know everything. I think society, this country that I moved to, would be better off if we could talk freely about everything. So I'm an extremist when it comes to that. That's why I love the US. I love the presumption that expression is free, and I want to make fullest use of that liberty and the liberty that the internet provides. There are still too many stories which are kept within the guild of journalists or insiders. Stories that people believe everybody knows, and yet the general public does not know. And I don't accept that the public should have any less right to know that information, to talk about that information, as the people who are on the inside, who are discussing it amongst themselves, often enjoying the privilege that they have of better access to information.
And my question to you was, what specific
I don't know what's correct.
Are there any stories that Gawker has, that Gawker.com has declined to publish, other than stories involving the outing of celebrities that implicate privacy concerns?
I'm sure that there have been some stories that have not been published that do touch on what might be seen by the subject as being an intrusion. But typically the reluctance of the journalist would be more a fear of public criticism of their actions.
And what would
was prejudice, it was slut shaming, it violated some tenets of political correctness.
And you don't believe that any of those characterizations apply to the Hogan sex tape video story or the excerpts that were published with it?
I can't remember my full list.
I'll try to refresh your recollection. Unnecessary, gratuitous, or slut shaming?
I think there's anything slut shaming about it. I think the concept of slut shaming is actually probably rather unfairly. Women are given more protection than men are in the court of public opinion, reader opinion. Certainly amongst more progressive readers.
Mr. Berlin is correct. Well, first let me ask you to just respond to the question in terms of whether you believe that the Hulk Hogan sex tape video in the story that accompanied it was in any way unnecessary or gratuitous.
At the time of the piece, actually was almost perfectly judged. That it was human and humanizing. I don't believe there was any real judgment. It showed, as far as I can tell from the description that I read last week, it showed Hulk Hogan as a person, a celebrity. We have very distorted views of celebrities. We have very distorted views of their importance as role models. I think they're held up to a ridiculous standard, both of looks and morality, and I think the general phenomenon, which is not just on the internet, but you can also see it in the Celebrity Week, is people like us. The celebrities, they're just like us, and I think that's in Us Weekly section. That's sort of the embodiment of this kind of trend in the media. The celebrities have been, either we've been brought up to the level of celebrities, everybody's become a celebrity, and everybody has become a public figure through their Facebook pages, or they've been brought back down to a more human level. I think generally that's been a very, very positive force for society.
Appreciate the commentary. Is the answer to my question no, then, that you do not believe that any portion of the posting was unnecessary or gratuitous?
I'm proud of the piece.
Are you familiar with an incident involving Gawker concerning a sex tape in which Rebecca Gawker and Eric Dane were involved?
I am.
Show you a document. We'll have a reporter marked 44. This is a 3-page document that prints a story from CBS News' website, and I'd ask you to just take a look at the first page of the document and just refresh your recollection about the content of the story. Just have a few questions about it. Okay. So in this instance, Gawker had posted a video of Mr. Dane and Ms. Gayard with a third person, Carrie Ann Paniche, nude or topless in a hot tub, correct?
Yes.
And that video was posted without the consent of any of those three individuals, correct?
Yes.
Do you know who took the video?
I vaguely remember, this is quite a while ago, I vaguely remember the camera being passed around.
Do you know who brought the video to Gawker?
I can't remember.
Do you know whether Gawker paid for it?
We may have paid for it.
Do you recall how much you paid?
No.
Are you involved in the decision-making process with respect to whether or not to pay for a particular piece of information or documents or materials?
Yes.
And were you involved in the decision-making process here?
I presume I was.
There was a lawsuit that ensued as a result of this posting, correct?
There was, yes.
And that lawsuit ultimately settled for an amount in the low six figures?
That is my recollection too.
The story indicates that Gawker's position in this case was that the use of the video was a protected fair use. Yet you settled the case anyway. Why did you settle?
I don't think I can really add anything to the quote from Gary Dalchin to avoid the burden of further litigation.
You recall, do you not, that the 12-minute edited video that was posted obscured everyone's private parts?
No, actually I didn't recollect that.
Do you have any reason to believe that that statement, which is found in the last paragraph of the story, is untrue?
No, I don't.
Can you tell me why you did not do the same thing with the Hulk Hogan sex tape video?
No, I can't. The different sites, different editorial regimes vary in their treatment of stories like this, and the stories themselves are usually quite distinct.
Well, let me ask you this. Is Hulk Hogan's penis more newsworthy than Eric Payne's?
I wouldn't say so. No. Oh yeah, I guess it was, Eric Payne's was, sort of I remember flaccid, but apart from that, I didn't remember any major distinctions.
Okay. But that does not change your view about the newsworthiness or non-newsworthiness of showing his penis in whatever condition it might have existed and that of Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
When you heard about the Hulk Hogan sex tape initially from Mr. Lawyer, were you excited to hear that Gawker had obtained the tape exclusively?
Actually, I wouldn't say I was very excited about the story. I was really more excited by, say, the Manti Teo story or the Toronto Man story.
As compared with the photos that Gawker ran of Kate Middleton's breasts, how did this story compare to that?
In terms of level of excitement, the fact is I'm actually not that personally interested in stories which might be seen to be salacious. I prefer stories that actually have some kind of meaning, and I'd say that the Hogan story probably had a higher level of meaning than the Middleton breast pictures.
In any event, both stories serve to promote the Gawker brand, isn't that correct?
I think both stories, let me be more precise, all good stories serve to promote our brand. Those stories helped to establish that we were willing to publish what others were not, and that Gawker.com and Gawker Media were titles, were places to find at what was really happening.
Who spoke to you about the story? What was said?
My recollection is hazy, and I'd have to tell you how I believed it all went down based on how it usually goes down, which is that I can't say this with absolute certainty, but I think that I had a conversation with AJ Delario on the fire escape outside 4th floor of the Gawker office. Well, that's where we would normally have these kind of conversations.
All right, so tell me about the conversation you had on the fire escape.
I had a vague recollection of a degree of excitement on his part. Excitement about the story.
Did he tell you what the nature of the story was?
I don't think he went into any great detail.
Did he talk to you about having obtained the sex tape DVD?
I presume so, but I can't remember any distinct conversation.
Did you review the sex tape video either in whole or in part prior to the publication of Mr. Delorio's story?
No, I actually still haven't seen it.
And what did you, as best you recall, say to him in response to his assessment?
I actually can't tell you specifically. I can tell you what I was likely to have said to him based on other stories. I would have encouraged him to avoid gratuitous representation of the tape, by which I mean, for instance, putting out the whole tape without making a point. I don't like that. And I would have advised him to consult with our counsel.
When you use the word gratuitous, do you mean anything other than what you've just said in terms of having the entire tape included? Or is there something else? Do you have some other meaning to gratuitous?
I can tell you what my personal feeling is about these kind of stories, and it is to some extent reflected in our general editorial policy, which is that I believe we all, well, I hope we all have sex, and that celebrities are humans, and that if we're going to make a point, we need to include as much detail as gives the story kind of color and meaning, but not so much that we're simply reveling in somebody else's embarrassment. I don't like it when anyone stands in judgment over others for behavior that they're likely to have pursued themselves. It seems hypocritical to me. Our enemy is hypocrisy, so we have to be particularly on the lookout for it ourselves. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And my question then following on that is whether you think that the excerpts of the video or the narrative that Mr. Delorio wrote that accompanied the video crossed any lines with respect to how you perceive the way in which matters like this should be treated.
It was, I understand, a relatively short excerpt of the video. As I said, I haven't seen it. The text I actually read for the first time last week, and I haven't read it last week. I thought its tone was sweet. As sweet as in sympathetic. I didn't go as Richard as I was not embarrassed by it.
The narrative went into some great detail about what was depicted on the entirety of the 30-minute videotape, correct? Is that your recollection?
It was a well-written story with as much detail as the story needed.
Did you know, prior to the publication of Mr. Delorio's article and the promulgation of the sex tape video of Hogan, whether that tape had been surreptitiously recorded?
No.
Did you endeavor to inquire about that?
No.
Have you ever issued a directive that says, or guidelines, I don't mean to be pejorative in any sense, that says, in words or effect, if you're going to post a sex tape, please determine whether all of the participants in the sexual encounter have consented to the taping?
That sounds probably more specific than I would normally get.
You don't have a recollection of having done that?
I don't have a recollection of having done that.
And is that something that you, as the president of Gawker Media, believe is something that should be done by the editors of the various sites under the Gawker Media umbrella?
I do believe that we should make some judgment as to whether somebody is a public figure and whether, by extension, their acts have any relevance to the public.
That's not exactly responsive to my question.
I wasn't meaning to be.
My question is more specific. Do you believe it is appropriate for editors of the sites under the Gawker Media family to make inquiries before posting a sex tape video into the question of whether or not both of the participants, or all of the participants in the production of the sex tape were aware of it having been recorded contemporaneously? Objection. Thanks for the question.
Can we talk?
If it involves something that might be privileged, then you should inquire. Do you have a question in mind, or would you like to rephrase it?
Maybe you can rephrase it.
Do you believe it is appropriate for the editor of Gawker.com to post any portion of a sex tape video without having first ascertained whether all of the participants in the sexual encounter were contemporaneously aware of the tape having been recorded?
We're not going to be aware of all the circumstances of the filming of anything, and no, we can't always determine the circumstances in which a film was made. Generally, in my experience, when at the point at which we received a video, there is usually the involvement of one of the participants.
One of the participants, potentially, right?
Or potentially both.
Okay. But going into the run-up to the publication of the subject article, and that included the Hogan sex tape video excerpts, you did not know, one way or another, whether all parties to that encounter had consented.
No.
When A.J. Delorio left Gawker in or about January of this year,
somewhere or another, because he's a buccaneering fellow, but I can't remember any specific instance.
What do you mean by a buccaneering fellow?
Buccaneering. You met him, he's charming, he's extremely good at his job. He doesn't subscribe to conventional management practice.
In what ways?
He decided he wanted to go to Tahrir Square in Cairo because there was a revolution going on. For instance, when he had responsibilities as editor of Gawker. So he is absolutely, like many journalists, but he's maybe a more extreme case than most, a seeker of novelty and experience. He's more of a charismatic or inspirational rather than a managerial leader.
Here's Exhibit 5. This appears to be an email exchange between the two of you, along with others being copied. Do you recall this exchange?
This is an email from me to all the staff.
Right, which was preceded by his email to the staff as well, right?
Yes, I think, looking at timestamps, this would probably be the case that I had actually written my note in anticipation.
You used a few adjectives to describe Mr. Florio. In the first paragraph, you described him as infuriating.
And bold, yes.
We'll get to several, but let's take them one at a time. What about him did you find infuriating?
Actually, probably the most infuriating thing about him was that he wasn't prepared to let his successors run. So the second most infuriating thing about him was that I didn't always understand what he was saying. Sometimes there was more charisma than coherence.
His successors were selected before his formal departure, I take it.
Yes. Successful.
Well, Mr. Cook, correct. What was the overlap of time? In other words, how much time was Mr. Florio at Gawker after the point in time that he was aware that the successor had been selected?
Oh, it would have been only a few days. But the whole process would have only been a few days. And that was probably all done that day. Went fast.
You also used the adjective unpredictable.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
For instance, his resignation then at the height, when everything was going well.
When you say at the height of...
At the height of his tenure, he had come in, I guess, he'd come in and he has overhauled the staff, he's gotten rid of some writers, he'd brought new writers in, he'd energized the team, and they were probably happier than they had been in years. More productive.
And you said also that he breaks all the usual rules of orthodox management.
Mm-hmm.
What did you mean by the usual rules of orthodox management?
I mean, I think we just discussed his punctuality, for instance. His presence in meetings, staff meetings, was weak. He wasn't good at holding a room. His prescriptions to staff were sometimes opaque. But he inspired loyalty, he had a real devotion to the story, he brought out the best in his writers. But like most people, a mixture of virtues and
vices. If I 36. What I'm showing you is a document that was a two-page document, Gawker 224, 225, which contains substantial redactions that will be the subject of further proceedings. But let me direct your attention for the moment to the paragraph that begins, "Anyway, we waited," below the first set of redactions. See that paragraph?
Yeah.
The sentence that I'm going to ask about reads, "Gawker scored with royal and paren this month, close paren, Hulk sex, period." You see that?
Yes.
What did you mean by using the word scored in that sentence?
That Gawker published stories which attracted a lot of attention and reader interest.
Let me ask you to take a look at Exhibit 7. And in particular, I'm going to direct your attention to the pages, I should say, labeled 819 through 821. Those pages represent the posting at issue, and I take it that this is a story that you reviewed in preparation for your deposition here today?
I did look at it, yes.
Let me direct your attention to the headline, which reads, "Even for a minute, comma, watching Hulk Hogan have sex in a canopy bed is not safe for work, but watch it anyway." Close quote. You didn't write that headline, did you?
No.
The story states that we're not supposed to see footage.
But it says that it's not safe for work.
Right. And that's what NSFW, the initials that appear above the headline, also stand for.
Yes.
Okay. Why are we not supposed to see it?
Because we would, watching a pornographic video in an office environment, probably get fired.
And,
We being the reader.
okay. And the reader would be fired because it would be offensive to do that. Is that correct?
To be seen by colleagues to be watching such a video would be seen as offensive, yes.
Did you ever give any consideration to whether or not the publication of the Editorial posting, including the excerpts from the said video, would be embarrassing to Hulk Hogan?
No, I didn't.
And why not?
Because my job is to disseminate information and to manage an organization that disseminates information. And that's our social function, to satisfy a reader's interest, to inform and entertain them. And it's up to others to determine the boundaries of accepted social, journalistic, and legal norms.
Did you ever give any consideration to whether or not publication of this posting would be upsetting to Mr. Hulk Hogan?
For the reasons I just explained, no, I didn't. I was focusing on our function as journalists and transmitters of information.
Did you ever give any consideration to whether this posting would cause Hulk Hogan to suffer emotional distress?
Can we take it as read that that will be my answer to most of these questions?
Say yes. And just if you would answer the question, no, then we could move on. The reason you did it.
We are journalists, as our role in society. It is up to others to have regard for their own emotional well-being, and up to others to decide and determine social, legal, and other norms.
Had you known for certain that Hulk Hogan would have suffered emotional distress as a result of this posting, you still would have published it, correct?
For the same reasons I elucidated earlier, I focus on our role as disseminators of information, as service to readers and to the cause of transparency in public life in America.
The answer to my question is yes, with that, for that reason.
Yes, for that reason.
At one point earlier today, you mentioned the term public figure. Do you have, what is your understanding of what a public figure is?
I think that to a large extent, whether something is public or not depends on their own choice. Choices they make. Matt Damon, by marrying a civilian, somebody who's not in the acting profession, and by living, at least until recently, in Miami, actually, rather than Los Angeles, managed to protect himself from some of the attention that his friend Ben Affleck suffered by virtue of his relationship with J-Lo. On a smaller scale, college students who publish every aspect of their life on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram become public by their own doing and choice. But it is possible still to live a private life if you don't record yourself, have pictures taken of yourself, don't disseminate them on social media or in groups of people.
Using your definition of a public figure, do you believe that Hulk Hogan was such a public figure at the time that Mr. Delorio's piece was posted?
Yes, certainly by virtue of the fact that even I knew his name despite my lack of interest in his chosen field. But yes, he was a public figure.
And do you think that by being a public figure, he had waived his privacy rights?
No, I don't really waive his privacy rights, but by virtue of being a public figure, he makes a choice to live less privately than others.
If someone obtained a clandestine tape of you having sexual relations, would you be okay with them publishing it?
I would be embarrassed.
What is the difference between you and Hulk Hogan in that regard?
Pardon?
This is a two-page letter bearing Gawker numbers 143 and 144. And let me give you an opportunity to review this, but my initial question is whether you recall having ever seen this letter before today.
I don't recall it.
Did you become aware at some point a cease and desist letter from counsel for Hulk Hogan had been received by Gawker?
I don't recall it specifically.
You don't recall it specifically, you're aware that that occurred?
No, it didn't.
Okay. After this letter was received, why did Gawker not remove the sex tape from its site?
Because we continue to believe in its newsletters.
Is there any reason why the genitalia or other private parts of the participants were not blurred by you after receiving this letter?
The letter didn't change, I think.
And why not?
It wasn't persuasive.
I'm sorry?